Late at night, a young boy went hunting in the mountains. He stumbled upon a strange egg in a clearing with white smoke rising around it. He carefully picked it up and examined it closely, but other than a very smooth surface, he couldn't find anything unusual about it. Later, the boy went to the pork butcher at the market, hoping to trade the strange egg he found for a pound of pork kidneys to nourish his body. The experienced butcher took one look at the egg and knew it was valuable. He initially thought the boy had stolen it, but when he learned the boy found it in the forbidden area, he got spooked and quickly handed the egg back. He explained that this thing belonged to King Galbatorix. Not wanting any trouble, he shooed the boy away. After getting kicked out, the boy planned to try his luck at another meat shop, but then he noticed some rough-looking soldiers questioning everyone and taking all the chicken from a nearby stall. The boy headed back to a small village in the valley. The boy's name was Eragon, and he was a young guy without a job. His mom had left him when he was little, and he lived with his uncle, getting by with farming and hunting. His uncle wasn't upset that he came back empty-handed, because he always treated Eragon like his own son. His cousin came running up, teasing him about always catching invisible prey. The two of them grew up together since they were kids, so they were super close. Whenever they had free time, they grabbed their weapons and practiced fighting. For them, this was just a normal part of their day, and if their dad didn't stop them, they could keep going until it got dark. Since Eragon still didn't know what the thing he found was good for, he didn't tell his family about it and hid it in the cow sheet. He couldn't help his curiosity, though, and took the strange egg out again to look at it closely. He even tried knocking on it like checking a watermelon, but it felt hollow inside. This made him a little suspicious. But he didn't have time to think more about it before he was called away to do farm chores. That day, his cousin suddenly told him that he wanted to go out and chase his dreams because he didn't want to spend his whole life stuck in this valley. Even though Eragon felt sad about it, instead of living in a kingdom full of uncertainty, both Eragon and his uncle were very supportive of his cousin going out to find his way. Before he left, they even offered him some coins, but his thoughtful cousin didn't take them, wanting to earn money himself to take care of the family. Since his cousin left home, Eragon's life became a lot less fun, until one day when he was sitting sadly in the cow sheet, something strange happened. The blue egg, which had been quiet all this time, suddenly started shaking, like something inside was struggling to break free and get out. Eragon heard the commotion and jumped up in surprise. He watched as the eggshell slowly cracked open, and finally, a small, winged dragon popped out. Eragon was shocked by this. It turned out this was a dragon egg. People say that a dragon egg will only hatch when it finds the right person, someone it connects with. If it doesn't find that person, it'll just stay an egg forever. The person chosen by a dragon egg becomes a dragon rider. It doesn't matter where you're from or how much education you have. The only important thing is the feeling. The baby dragon, still pretty weak from hatching, wobbled over to Eragon and looked at him with big, innocent eyes. Suddenly, it spread its tiny wings, startling Eragon. Seeing how cute and funny it looked, Eragon instinctively reached out to touch the adorable creature in front of him. But the moment he touched the baby dragon, a bright light burst out. Eragon fainted, and this whole thing made a huge noise, not only waking up the two men from their sleep, but also making a beautiful woman break into a strange smile. What on earth is going on? It turns out that a long time ago, this continent used to be full of dragons and dragon riders. Because they had this crazy, powerful magic, the people on the land were protected by the dragon riders, helping the civilization thrive for thousands of years. But because the peace lasted for thousands of years, it got pretty boring, and the dragon riders started getting cocky and full of themselves. Eventually, they started a war, fighting for power and killing each other. In the end, the evil dragon rider, Galbatorix, betrayed the others. He used his ultimate power to wipe out all the other dragons and dragon riders. After that, he seized all the power and became the last one standing. Naturally, he also became the king of this land, but he was super evil and brutal, wiping out anyone who wouldn't obey him. The rebels who refused to bow down to Galbatorix could only hide in the deep forest, building up their strength and waiting for a miracle. Then one day, Princess Arya of the Elves discovered that Galbatorix's dragon had laid an egg, so she risked her life and stole the egg from Galbatorix. Galbatorix sent Durza to chase her down and get the egg back at all costs because he didn't want anyone threatening his throne. It wasn't long before Durza and his henchmen set out. Along the way, they were intercepted, but Princess Arya's guards were taken down. Princess Arya couldn't escape either and got hit by Durza's magic, trapped in a raging fire with no way out. Durza pressured her to hand over the dragon egg. Luckily, at the critical moment, Princess Arya held up the dragon egg, chanted an ancient elvish spell, and teleported the egg somewhere else. She was captured and imprisoned by Durza. Coincidentally, Eragon, who was just wandering around hunting in the forest, stumbled upon the dragon egg, and from that moment on, his destiny changed. When Eragon woke up again, he found Saphira lying quietly in his arms, looking at him with her big, round eyes. Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through his palm. When he raised his right hand, he saw a strange mark had appeared on it. Eragon didn't know what this meant, so he didn't pay much attention to it. Seeing the dragon, Saphira suddenly open her mouth and hiss. He figured she was hungry and got up to bring her a bucket of fresh milk. He didn't know how to take care of a dragon, so he just gave her milk for now. Surprisingly, Saphira wasn't impressed at all because she didn't like milk. Suddenly, a faint sound came from behind her, and she turned and burrowed into the pile of firewood. Curious, Eragon went over to take a look. It was then that he realized Saphira was a meat eater. Even though she was tiny, she had a big appetite, gulping down a big rat in one bite. Eragon liked the unusual Saphira, so he decided he would secretly raise her. Saphira, as if she had accepted him as her owner, stuck close to Eragon all the time. Her affectionate behavior, never leaving his side, was like she saw Eragon as her only family. At the same time, Durza, by controlling the princess's mind, found out where the dragon egg was and learned that it had hatched. The appearance of a dragon made Galbatorix feel his throne was threatened like never before. He didn't want any powerful dragon riders to exist in this world, so he sent the strongest sorcerer in the kingdom, Durza. He wanted to prevent the birth of a dragon rider and stop them from joining forces with the resistance, because the dragon rider was a hope of the resistance and the only power that could stand against him. After that, Durza stood on a high platform, continuously chanting ancient spells. Right after, he directly summoned a group of demons called the Arazak to eliminate the dragon rider. That night, Eragon went to the tavern in the village. He had just sat down when he heard people crying about their children, who had just turned 16 and were taken by Galbatorix to join the army, or vanished without a trace, with no one ever returning alive. A single man named Brum didn't hold back, saying that life wasn't always like this. The glorious kingdom of the past was without violence and fear. It was the age of dragons and dragon riders. These brave warriors, riding on the backs of giant beasts, were always invincible, always protecting the kingdom and its honor. Back then, people lived in peace and happiness until a dragon rider named Galbatorix staged a coup and attacked all the other dragon riders. But before he could finish his story, he was stopped by the guards nearby from continuing. Brom still believed that one day the era of the dragon riders would return. After hearing Brom tell the legend of the dragon riders, Eragon realizes that the dragon rider in the legend might be him. His heart was racing like an overinflated, expired sausage, so he took the baby dragon, Saphira, outside to practice flying so she could grow up faster. After many tries, Saphira finally flapped her wings and flew into the sky. At first, Eragon felt incredibly excited, but then Saphira disappeared without a trace. He stood there, confused. He thought that maybe her wings were strong enough now, and she wanted to leave him. He couldn't help but feel disappointed. But then a sharp pain suddenly shot through his palm. The mark on his hand glowed with a strange light, and it seemed like he sensed something. He looked up, and to his surprise, the dragon's growth rate was way beyond what he imagined. The giant Saphira, weighing tons, swooped down from the sky, startling Eragon. Just minutes ago, she was still a cute baby dragon just learning to fly with his help. What no one expected was that she had incredible talent. With just a few flaps, she had already flown up to the clouds. Her growth rate was astonishing, like a seed caught in a huge wind, growing unexpectedly fast. After a burst of thunder and lightning, the little dragon had evolved into a giant dragon, flapping its enormous wings and soaring through the air. Eragon looked at the mark on his palm and felt a strange sensation. The enormous Saphira let out a deafening roar and charged straight at him, making him jump back, startled. She stood tall and imposing. The horns on her head, sharp as blades, gave off an aura of extraordinary power. Eragon looked at the giant creature in front of him, not understanding what was happening. Unexpectedly, Saphira could read Eragon's thoughts. Brahm was right. The era of the dragon riders had arrived. Through their mental connection, Eragon understood Saphira's language. It turned out that the moment Eragon reached out and touched the baby dragon, Saphira had marked his hand with the sign of a pact, signifying that from then on, he would officially become a dragon rider. Because of the dragon rider Eragon, Saphira had waited for 1,000 years, and she hoped he would join her in destroying evil. Hearing Saphira say this, Eragon remembered the story about dragon riders that Brahm had told the previous night. He hadn't finished the story because he'd been threatened by the guards, but Eragon still remembered it clearly. Brahm had looked at him one last time and said meaningfully, "The era of the dragon riders will return." So, Eragon secretly broke into Brahm's house, hoping to learn more secrets about dragon riders. On his table was a book, a magical handbook about dragons. While Eragon was engrossed in reading, Brahm suddenly appeared saying, "Get out." Eragon replied, "Get out? Was what you said true?" Eragon tried to pry more legends about dragons from Brahm, but he seemed to avoid the question, and Eragon got scolded harshly. Maybe it was because he didn't want to get into trouble, but Brahm kicked him out. Eragon also didn't tell Brahm about Saphira. He didn't trust others easily, so why would others trust him? After Eragon left, Brahm quietly took out a sword that had been sealed away for many years, and it was the distinctive sword of a dragon rider. It turned out that he used to be a renowned dragon rider, but for some unknown reason, was now living in seclusion in this remote place. On his way back, Eragon felt angry. As he passed by the pork butcher shop, he heard strange noises coming from inside. He slowly approached the window and saw a monster torturing the butcher, demanding to know Eragon's whereabouts. The butcher couldn't take the torture and finally revealed Eragon's home address. In the end, the butcher was brutally murdered by the monster, while Eragon, thinking quickly, hid under a nearby table and narrowly escaped death when he saw the monster leave. Eragon realized the situation was incredibly dangerous, so he sprinted home, wanting to quickly warn his uncle to escape. But what Eragon didn't expect was that Saphira seemed to sense he was in danger, so she quickly flew over and snatched him into the air. She wanted to stop him from going back into danger, because dragons knew the terrifying power of demons. As Eragon's loyal protector, her top priority was to keep him safe and get him away. While Eragon lay on her back, he was shaking with fear, crying, and begging her to put him down because he couldn't leave his family behind. The dragon said that the demon's speed was unbelievably fast, so it was already too late to go back. But Eragon, desperate to save his family, insisted on returning home. Seeing that she wouldn't put him down, Eragon struggled on her back. Saphira, afraid that Eragon would fall, had no choice but to give in, taking him back to the farm and dropping him onto a haystack. When Eragon rushed into the house, he discovered that his uncle, the person he had depended on for so long, had been brutally murdered. Eragon couldn't face this reality. His heart quickly shattered. Saphira, seeing this, came over to comfort Eragon, but he blamed his uncle's death on her. If she hadn't stopped him, he could have gotten home sooner and warned his uncle. Saphira urged Eragon to leave quickly because the demons could appear at any moment, but he wouldn't listen. He kept blaming Saphira, taking all his anger out on her. Saphira, feeling hurt, flapped her wings and flew into the sky, while Eragon fell to his knees, overwhelmed with grief, crying so hard he could barely breathe. Suddenly, someone appeared at the door. Eragon, thinking the killer had returned, grabbed a wooden stick and charged out for revenge, but he was quickly restrained. It was then that he realized the person who had come was Brahm. Seeing the mark on Eragon's hand, Brahm suddenly realized he was the new dragon rider. Brahm became tense. He pulled Eragon up, ready to leave this place. However, Eragon refused to leave. He wanted to stay and bury his family. Brahm, without saying another word, burned the whole house to ashes, taking care of things completely. After dealing with everything, Brum dragged Eragon outside and warned that if they delayed any longer, it would be too late if the demons found them. Then he led Eragon on horseback, racing away from this dangerous place. They crossed through dense forest, over beautiful hills, and finally stopped to rest on a mountaintop. He said this place was called the Dragon's Spine, so Brum told Eragon to quickly summon the dragon, because only she could keep them both safe. Even though Eragon wasn't very willing, after Brum explained things, he realized the truth. He understood that Galbatorix was a mastermind behind everything, and what the dragon did was all to protect his life. Eragon looked up at the sky, mentally summoning Saphira and apologizing to her. Finally, the human and the dragon are made up. Who is this? He's Brum. He knows a lot about dragons. I'll be the judge of that. Brum came forward and carefully examined Saphira, looking at her powerful body and muscles. This truly is an amazing battle dragon, and soon she will become even stronger. Then Brum told Eragon that he was now the last dragon rider in the world, and Galbatorix would keep sending people to hunt him down. So, the only thing to do now was to find the resistance hiding in the caves. Only then would he have a chance to defeat the cruel king and avenge his uncle. But Eragon didn't want to be a dragon rider. Anyone who raised dragons knew this creature only hatched in front of the person it acknowledged. Once the pact was made, it would be eternally loyal. Moreover, the relationship between a dragon and a dragon rider still held aspects of a master-slave relationship, like in a slave society. The dragon had to protect the rider. If the rider died, the dragon would die too, but if the dragon died, the rider would be unharmed. Galbatorix wouldn't allow dragon riders to reappear. He gave Durza a final ultimatum, demanding that he eliminate the dragon rider before he could fully mature. Durza appeared at the main base of the demon horde. The demons were once Galbatorix's strongest enemies, but were eventually controlled by Durza and became his guard. Durza ordered them to take the dragon rider's head. To avoid Galbatorix's pursuit, Eragon told the dragon to circle in the sky during the day as a lookout and only meet up with him at night. The two of them, meanwhile, were relentlessly traveling towards the last base of the resistance. However, the demon horde dispatched by Durza had discovered their whereabouts. While fleeing, they saw a group of demons blocking the road and robbing a carriage. Eragon wanted to rush in and help. He thought that with his skills and the dragon's assistance, dealing with them wouldn't be a problem. Wanting Eragon to realize his limitations, Brum decided to teach him a lesson. Using only a tree branch he picked up from the side of the road, he easily defeated Eragon in just a few moves. Next, they would have to face a life-or-death battle. Such blind confidence was unacceptable. Brum sternly warned Eragon that their enemy was Durza, and under his command were thousands of monstrous warriors. He had to become a qualified dragon rider to protect his own life. Eragon, momentarily dejected, sat slumped on the ground. Brum, beside him, muttered a few spells, making the firewood burst into flames. But when Eragon came over to ask about it, he said it was just a magic trick. Eragon felt that Brum was still hiding a huge secret. He not only understood dragon riders very well, but also knew how to use magic. On their journey, the two passed through a mysterious village of witches. Sensing something ominous, Brum told Eragon to buy some dried food for the road, while he went off in another direction to take care of some business. For some reason, Eragon entered a villager's house and found a beautiful woman inside who left him stunned. The woman introduced herself as Angela, a witch knowledgeable in astronomy and geography. She saw a darkness on Eragon's forehead and said that he would soon face bloodshed. She even recounted everything since he found the dragon egg, including the recurring dream where a girl called him, but she didn't reveal the girl's name. After hearing this, Eragon, filled with doubt, walked out of the house, only to be suddenly grabbed by the throat. In the nick of time, Brum appeared and saved him. It turned out it was a goblin sent by the witch to ambush them. Just as they were rushing to leave, they were surrounded and blocked by a group of goblins. Brum swung his sword in close combat, while Eragon drew his bow to provide support from a distance, but they couldn't kill these goblins. Suddenly, Eragon tripped and fell. Forget about revenge. Even surviving was now in question. In this critical moment, Eragon desperately picked up his bow and suddenly shouted. Unexpectedly, he awakened the power of the dragons. The magic arrow shot out, blowing away all the goblins, but he also fainted from using too much power. When he woke up, he found a mark on his hand burning like fire. Brom told him the reason he could shoot such a powerful fire arrow last night was because of the mystical mark on his hand. This was a magic mark from the dragon's body, and whenever the rider was in danger, the mark would provide timely assistance. Moreover, this type of magic was incredibly powerful, so ordinary people couldn't withstand its energy. Being a dragon rider doesn't just mean having your dragon. You can also master many kinds of magic. This boosted Eragon's confidence. But Brom explained that magic in this world has its own rules and limits. Before using magic, you need to use an ancient language, and you shouldn't use it unless you're desperate. That's because magic is like alchemy. It's all about the equivalent exchange. When you use it, your body also suffers the backlash of the spell. It can make you extremely weak or even kill you. So, you need to use it within your limits. Now that their whereabouts have been exposed, Eragon had to learn how to ride a dragon and fight from its back. The terrifying power of a dragon rider comes from their dragon. Only when the rider and dragon are in sync can they unleash their maximum strength. Brom equipped Saphira with a special saddle, and Eragon climbed onto her back to try and practice riding. Saphira took him to the edge of a deep cliff. Just looking down made Eragon tremble all over with fear. Saphira spread her wings and plunged straight down. The feeling of weightlessness made his scalp tingle, accelerating to 100 meters in just 0.9 seconds. Let's just say it's faster than a stock market crash. After that thrilling flying experience, the coordination between humans and dragons gradually became more in sync. Eragon learned to control Saphira, but Saphira said these were just the basics. When they truly became one, they could even fight while standing on the dragon's tail. Eragon rode on Saphira's back and gradually entered a meditative state. Then he recited the spell. His eyes turned blue, and unexpectedly, he merged with Saphira's vision. It was as if everything in front of him was magnified many times over, and it even had a magical infrared scanning function. Even goblins thousands of meters away couldn't escape his sight, but he suddenly noticed goblins rapidly approaching Brom. Seeing his friend in danger, Eragon, thinking he had entered the unified state, commanded Saphira to dive down and assist. Saphira plunged straight into the forest, but there were too many obstacles in the woods, so it wasn't her ideal terrain. They moved very slowly. As soon as they appeared, they were ambushed by goblins. Eragon was thrown forcefully from Saphira's back to the ground. Saphira also accidentally crashed into a nearby tree branch and fell heavily to the ground, rolling several times. Seeing their opponent fall, the goblins rushed in for the kill. Luckily, before setting off, Eragon had learned some magic. In this critical moment, he summoned vines to take out the goblins. Saphira was injured in the crash. Eragon ran over to check on Saphira's injuries, not realizing a goblin was hiding behind him. Thankfully, at the crucial moment, Brom bravely stepped in to protect him, taking the hit for him. After that, the two sides faced off directly. Unexpectedly, Brom had incredibly impressive skills. With a masterful stance, he easily defeated the goblins. Eragon stood on the sidelines, watching in astonishment, his jaw dropping. When he saw the sword in Brom's hand, he was even more certain that Brom was no ordinary person. Afterward, they quickly gathered herbs and applied them to Saphira's injured wing. At the same time, Brom advised Eragon to protect Saphira well and not to act recklessly, as it had almost cost Saphira her life. "Don't worry about me. I'm not as weak as you think." Although Eragon felt incredibly guilty, he was now even more curious about Brom's identity. Through Brom's actions, Eragon also discovered the secret he had always hidden. It turned out he was once a dragon rider, but his dragon was killed by another dragon rider while protecting him. He angrily sought out that dragon rider, took his sword, and used that very sword to kill him as revenge. That rider's dragon also vanished after that, and it was the last one in the world besides Galbatorix's. That meant Saphira was the last one remaining. This means Brom had single-handedly ended the era of dragon riders with this sword. With no more dragons in the world, people lost all meaning in their lives. From then on, Brom was filled with immense regret. He fell apart and became a fallen dragon rider. For many years, he lived in anonymity, until he saw the birth of a new dragon rider, which rekindled his hope for life. His subordinates continuously returning empty-handed enraged Durza to no end. He ruthlessly pierced the subordinate's head with his finger and turned to enter the prison. This time, he was determined to personally capture the last dragon rider in the world. Durza cooked up a plan using a beautiful woman. He cast a dark spell on the princess's chest, controlled her mind, and sent her into the dragon rider's dreams. On the other side, Eragon dreamt of the woman in the prison. She told Eragon that her name was Arya, princess of the Elven Kingdom and also an ally of the Resistance. A few days ago, she was hunted by Durza. In a desperate moment, she teleported the dragon egg away, and it was accidentally found by Eragon while he was hunting. She was imprisoned by Durza. Now, only Eragon can save her. When Eragon woke up from his dream, he suddenly shivered as if he were possessed. He packed his things and prepared to go back to save the princess. Brum thinks that doing so is no different than rushing to his death, because it is very likely that this is a trap that Durza has set to lure him into the net. However, the stubborn Eragon still insisted on saving the princess. Even though Brum advised him or called him stupid, it was useless. Seeing that she couldn't convince him, Saphira also spoke up. Saphira subtly suggested that Eragon was being a bit reckless, but he wouldn't see it. And as Eragon's one and only dragon, she had no choice but to follow his lead. Eragon hopped on his dragon and shot straight up into the sky. He flew over mountains, rivers, and seas, and very quickly found the prison where the princess was being held. This place was super heavily guarded. Because he couldn't merge with Saphira, Eragon told her to wait outside. Saphira kept stressing that there's strength in numbers, but Eragon argued that a dragon was way too noticeable and would blow their cover. So he refused. That night, Eragon disguised himself as a wizard and snuck into the prison. It seemed like everything was going pretty smoothly. After getting inside, he used his dragon sight to find the princess, along with the waves of vibrations before his eyes. He quickly located the cell where she was locked up. Then, he easily used magic to open the cell door. Heroes have always had trouble resisting a beautiful woman, and just as predicted, Eragon fell for the trap. Seeing Eragon, the princess urgently warned him to leave, but it was too late. Durza suddenly appeared behind the two and laughed loudly with glee. He'd searched everywhere to no avail, and now his target had walked right into his hands without any effort. "You dared to come here to die?" Eragon, hearing the mocking words, couldn't contain his rage. He grabbed a knife in charge, but his opponent dodged with ease. Durza, now provoked, decided to show no mercy. He gathered his energy and launched an attack at Eragon, but it didn't cause any real damage. It turned out Durza didn't consider this little greenhorn Eragon to be a serious threat. But then, Durza's real attack began. Even though Eragon had learned a few ancient elf spells, he was still no match for him. Facing Durza's final fatal blow, in a split second, Brum appeared out of nowhere, flying in to sacrifice himself and take the hit for Eragon. Seeing Brum in mortal danger, Eragon, in a fit of rage, grabbed his sword and threw it at Durza, but the sorcerer blocked it with ease. Eragon then fired an arrow, hitting the sorcerer square in the forehead. Let's see, be careless now. After Durza vanished, the princess, who had been under his control, was freed. The two of them helped the severely wounded Brum, preparing to escape, but by this time, guards had surrounded them. Eragon called his dragon for backup, and then a huge explosion rocked the area. Saphira smashed through the wall, flying in as the guards, caught off guard, were crushed by falling debris. The dragon's fighting ability was incredibly powerful. In just a few attacks, she took down all the remaining guards. Afterward, with the dragon's help, the three of them managed to escape. But sadly, Brum was too badly injured and only had his last breath left. He told Eragon that Durza wasn't dead. Only a stab to the heart would finish him off. Attacks on other body parts were useless. Don't just shoot randomly anymore. Then he handed his sword to Eragon, hoping Eragon would take it to find allies and join forces to destroy evil. Eragon was filled with regret, feeling like he was the one who had gotten him killed. He chanted a spell, trying to use all his strength to save Brum, but with his current power, it was just a desperate effort. Saphira couldn't bear it any longer and said to let him go in peace. Now, he wants to be a dragon rider, so I'll help him achieve that. then carried Brahm and soared into the sky. After Brahm got to experience the feeling of being a dragon rider once more, Eragon buried him at the dragon's spine on the mountaintop. Saphira spat a mouthful of dragon saliva onto the grave, turning it into a crystal tomb. It would keep Brahm's body from ever decaying, and the rider's spirit would live on forever. Both were determined to end Galbatorix's cruel reign, so they continued their journey to find the rebel forces. Meanwhile, Durza wasn't dead. He poured his fresh blood into the fire. His blood seeped deep into the blazing flames, and the cursed princess writhed in agony. Turns out, this kind of damaging magic could only be healed by returning to the rebel forces' hideout. Just then, Saphira sensed someone was following them. She chased after them and quickly caught the man who was secretly tailing them and reported that this guy had been following them from the start. The man wasn't scared at all and explained that he meant no harm. He had heard about the return of dragons to the world and wanted to follow the dragon rider. Moreover, he could guide them to the mountain range where the rebel forces were hiding. He also said that his family was killed by Galbatorix when he was a child, so he wanted revenge too. After hearing this, Eragon was filled with renewed energy and set off with him right away. The rebel base was located in a treacherous, hard-to-find mountain range. After many days and nights of trekking through mountains and rivers, they found the entrance to the cave behind a waterfall. The two plunged into the lake water and quickly infiltrated the cave. This was the hiding place of the resistance. When the soldiers were about to capture them, Saphira, who had followed, proved the identity of the dragon rider. The appearance of the dragon brought hope to the resistance. The leader of the resistance agreed to heal the princess for Eragon, but he demanded that he join forces with them to deal with Galbatorix. Galbatorix, upon hearing this news, was overjoyed because Eragon had helped them find the resistance's base, which they had been searching for a long time. He ordered Durza to gather all his forces, preparing to eliminate the dragon rider and the resistance. Even though the resistance was hiding in a treacherous mountain range and had a solid stronghold, no walls could stop the infiltration of Durza's goblin army. Soon, Durza led a massive army of evil goblins to surround the mountain where the resistance was hiding. The resistance on this side had also prepared for battle by building defensive fortifications. The leader ordered the creation of armor for the giant dragon and a suit of armor made from dragon scales overnight, preparing for a life-or-death battle with Durza's army. At midnight, Durza led thousands of troops and finally launched an attack. They broke through the stone walls and charged inside. The resistance fighters also charged into battle, even though they had prepared thoroughly. Their giant dragons had all been slaughtered in the previous civil war, so they were gradually losing ground as they faced wave after wave of enemies. Eragon watched the battle unfold, utterly terrified, but Saphira gave him boundless confidence. He had grown from an ordinary boy into a dragon rider, carrying a great responsibility. When he drew his rider's sword, Saphira also breathed out a fierce fire, enhancing the sword's power. As blood flowed like a river on the battlefield, Saphira and Eragon made a spectacular entrance. At that moment, they were one. Saphira roared in fury and charged straight into the battlefield with Eragon. Everyone's hopes were riding on their shoulders. Saphira was a terror, like a living flamethrower, blasting fire everywhere. She kept unleashing torrents of fire on the invaders, turning the battlefield into a raging inferno. With just a few charges, the dragon and rider turned the enemy's vanguard into roasted ducks. The enemy's morale plummeted, while the rebel fighters were pumped up. Seeing victory so close, Durza couldn't just stand there and watch. He gritted his teeth, chanted a spell, and used his killing intent to summon a giant, monstrous dragon. Under the moonlight, the demon dragon became even more terrifying and gruesome. The resistance fighters fired a rain of arrows aimed directly at Durza, but he easily deflected them all. Durza rode the demon dragon, advancing with unstoppable force. Each attack caused an explosion, killing most of the fighters. Durza's subordinates were extremely dissatisfied, jeering nonstop. "If we knew you could transform into a dragon and were this strong, why did you even call us out here?" But things in life aren't always fair. The outcome was left to Durza and the dragon rider to decide. Come and taste your dragon blood. Taste your head. The battle between the two sides erupted, and Saphira once again unleashed a fireball towards Durza. Durza didn't dodge, but easily dispelled it with a wave of his hand. Seeing this, Eragon decided to close in for close combat. He attacked the demon dragon with his sword, but was surprised to find it immune to all ordinary physical attacks. Seeing him stunned, Durza added a magic blast, and its destructive power was truly not to be underestimated. Eragon and Saphira flew up high again, and tried diving down from a great height at high speed, attacking the opponent head-on, causing the two sides to collide violently. But it still couldn't harm the demon dragon. Durza reached out with his left hand, conjuring a short, fiery sword that struck Eragon's back. Eragon hadn't been a dragon rider for long, so he couldn't fully utilize the dragon's power. This time, he didn't succeed and was nearly seriously injured. Just as Saphira continued to breathe fire, the demon dragon, unfazed by her attack, bit down hard on Saphira's neck. Saphira roared and thrashed in pain, even whipping her tail repeatedly at the demon dragon. In desperation, Eragon drew his sword and stabbed the demon dragon hard in the side, finally breaking, free from its bite. After getting free, Saphira unleashed a torrent of fire, finally escaping the dangerous situation. But Durza wouldn't let them go so easily. He continuously compressed magic spheres, attacking them. In terms of physique, ability, technique, and experience, Durza held an absolute advantage. Eragon and Saphira were chased and attacked until they were covered in wounds, their heads also full of bumps. Eragon was preparing to counterattack when he realized his vision was becoming blurry. It turned out Saphira had been severely injured and was weakening. Leading to the situation, Eragon panicked because, in times of crisis, it becomes clear who's been hitting the books and who's been through training. If you don't put in the effort when you're young, even having a dragon is pointless. Realizing he couldn't compete based on learning, Eragon decided to risk it all. As Durza prepared to launch a new attack, he was surprised to find the rider on the dragon's back had disappeared. Unexpectedly, Eragon was already standing on the dragon's tail, waiting for the right moment to act. Saphira flew up high and then swung her tail forcefully, flinging Eragon straight towards Durza's face. Durza, arrogant as ever, was stabbed through the heart, ending his life of crime. With a horrible shriek, Durza turned into a pile of dust. Eragon, with nothing left to hold on to, plummeted from the sky. Just before hitting the ground, Saphira used her last bit of strength to catch him, as the ground was very close. In the final moment, Saphira used her own body to protect Eragon tightly, and then they heavily crashed to the ground, rolling several times. Saphira was badly injured and looked like she wouldn't make it. Eragon, overcome with grief, quickly used the dragon rider's mark. He put all his magic power to the limit, to heal her until he was exhausted and passed out. After an unknown amount of time, Eragon finally woke up. Surprisingly, Saphira had also been saved by him. From then on, Eragon became a true dragon rider, and they would go on to protect the people of this land. Everyone turned from grief to joy, cheering and jumping up and down with happiness, shouting that the dragon rider was a hero. When he learned that Princess Arya was returning to the Elven Kingdom, Eragon rode the dragon to intercept her on the plains. The two looked at each other, smiled, and slowly walked closer. "You didn't give me a chance to say goodbye." The princess said, "I didn't have time. You defeated Durza, so Galbatorix will surely be furious. I must return quickly to inform my people." Hearing this, Eragon didn't give up hope. "So when can I see you again?" The princess continued, "Let's meet again in the sequel." Eragon followed up, "Okay, we'll be waiting for you in the sequel." Princess Arya didn't forget to instruct Saphira, "Dragon, take good care of him." "I will." Sadly, time flies, and in the blink of an eye, 18 years have passed. The bright scene suddenly changed. Galbatorix, in a dark cave, was furious, his hair standing on end. He drew his sword and slashed the curtain behind him. An extremely ugly, evil dragon emerged. The strongest villain is about to appear.